After a Saudi national opened fire at a naval base in Pensacola, Florida last week, many, including Crystal and myself, have spoken out about the poor handling of the matter by President Trump. Presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard has long held that the U.S.-Saudi alliance isn't good for our country, and this weekend she also was asked this question.
After a Saudi lieutenant carried out a terrorist attack in Pensacola that killed 3 service members and left 8 others injured, why is the President of the United States and his Secretary of State acting as the spokesperson for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
And this week's Washington Post revelation that the war in Afghanistan was not as presented and to the public has been misled for years about it. It's also, as Gabbard once again calling for an end to what she said, endless wars. And Congresswoman Gabbard joins us now via Skype to talk about both of these very important issues. Welcome back to the show, Congresswoman. It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Absolutely. So first, your reaction to this Washington Post story. It details the systematic lying to the American people for almost 2 decades by many of the senior-most U.S. officials involved in the Afghan war. How would you deal with this as president? I've said that there should be congressional inquiry and at least some sort of investigation into these matters. What is your reaction to that news, and how would you deal with it?
Well, first of all, I'm putting legislation in to call for a congressional inquiry. There has to be accountability for the lying and the wasting of American taxpayer dollars. What to speak of those families whose loved ones were killed in that war, who never got to say their final goodbye, who welcomed their son or daughter, brother or sister, husband or wife home at Dover Air Force Base in a coffin, draped with an American flag. The cost of this war and these regime change wars and the nation building that follows is immeasurable in many ways, but it's measurable in the ways that have been detailed in that Washington Post report. We've known for so long that it is the military-industrial complex, contractors, consultants like McKinsey who are profiting off of this scam that has ripped off the American taxpayer dollars of over $1 trillion just in Afghanistan alone. So look, I've been calling for an end to this for so long, to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. As president, this is exactly what I would do and make this a priority to get done within my first year in office. But look, my hope is that this happens sooner, so that we see no more American taxpayer dollars being wasted there, that we see no more American lives being lost in this war, and that we can actually start to redirect our taxpayer dollars back to serving the needs of the people here at home. $4 billion every month is currently being spent in Afghanistan. $4 billion. And I tell you what, out on the campaign trail, we're having town halls and having conversations with people who are pleading for help with things like healthcare, medicine for their kids, more affordable housing for veterans to not be living homeless on the streets. We have great needs here at home, which is why as president, I'll put an end to this insanity, end this regime change war and follow on nation building that has cost us so much, end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, and instead use our taxpayer dollars into actually serving the interests and needs of the people here in our communities at home.
Which of your fellow candidates, competitors in the primary concerns you the most on issues of foreign policy?
I think there's been such a lack of focus on foreign policy that very few of the candidates have really gotten into depth about where they stand on these issues, which is part of the problem. This is something that I've been raising time and time again, that there should be an in-depth look at experience, understanding of foreign policy and national security issues, what each of the candidates brings to the table in that respect, and what they would do about the ongoing regime change, dictator toppling policies that our country has, and the nation building that follows that we're seeing is costing us as taxpayers tremendously.
So, Congresswoman, you've announced yesterday that you will not be attending the debate regardless of whether you qualify or not. Can you just take us into your decision-making on that front? What made you decide not to do that? Because I saw some disappointment expressed because of how well you articulate these issues when you are up on there on the debate stage.
with the very little time that I've been given. Look, I don't see the value that it brings to voters, and so we are just over 8 weeks before, or just about 8 weeks before the first states start voting, and so I'm going to use the limited time that we have to continue to reach out directly to voters in person. We're going, town by town, business by business, person by person, town halls, and using every platform available that will provide us with the opportunity to really deliver the clear message of ushering in a bright future for our country that's actually focused on serving the American people, putting people ahead of profits, putting people ahead of partisan politics, so that working side by side, we can really bring about a government that is truly of, by, and for the people.
I also wanted to ask your reaction to that shooting in Pensacola, perpetrated by Saudi national. How would you change our relationship with Saudi Arabia, and what did you make of President Trump and other leaders' responses here in the U.S.?
Look, this was a terrorist attack that took the lives of 3 American service members and injured 8 others. And to call it for what it is, instead of what President Trump has done with his own remarks, with Secretary Pompeo, basically putting out messages as though they are the spokespersons for the Saudi kingdom, rather than standing up for our country's national security and what's in the best interest of our country, and speaking up for those families who just lost their loved ones, for those who are being the victims of this terrorist attack. Saudi Arabia is not our ally. As president, I will state that very clearly, and they will continue to not be our ally so long as they are both directly and indirectly supporting terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and others, and so long as they are continuing to export and propagate this extremist Islamist, Wahhabi Salafist ideology, spending hundreds of billions of dollars to push this ideology around the world, creating a fertile recruiting ground for more of these terrorist groups to continue to grow and strengthen.
Mm-hmm. And I couldn't notice, Congresswoman, that you mentioned the company McKinsey earlier when you were talking. Of course, that caught our eye, and we thought of Mayor Pete Buttigieg's work. Some of the other candidates in the race have criticized him for his work there and have called this transparency. He's announced that he's going to release his client list. But do you think that work for such an organization is disqualifying to be president? And how do you feel about the issue?
Voters are going to make their decisions, but they should know about the experience and the background and the work that every candidate has done, including Pete Buttigieg. Look, he graduated from a great school. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's got this incredible resume, right? He could have chosen to work anywhere. Why he chose to go and work for a company like McKinsey that makes a hell of a lot of money off of putting people out of their jobs and has made a hell of a lot of money off of their consulting work in Afghanistan. This report coming out from the Washington Post detailing how many hundreds of millions, over $1 trillion in Afghanistan came out of our pockets as taxpayers, and to reach what end, to reach what objective? To fatten the profits and fill the pockets of people like those at McKinsey and others.
Elizabeth Warren is also being hit for some of the work she did for corporate clients, in particular representing those who were trying to keep from having to pay asbestos victims, people who had been injured by breast implants, trying to keep from having to clean up a toxic waste site. Do you think that that's a legitimate issue of inquiry for her as well?
Of course. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Congresswoman. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And we'll have more Rising after this.